Calaroga Shark Media.
Hey there, fellow basement dwellers. This is Journey Joe Mitchell, coming at you from the cozy confines of the TV dungeon. We're diving deep into one of my all-time favorite movies and a personal holiday tradition, Jaws. Now, I know what you're thinking. Joe, aren't you supposed to be talking about recent TV shows? Well, sometimes you've got to break the rules, folks. And let's be honest, Jaws is the kind of movie that deserves to be talked about all year round. So, let's start with the basics. Jaws, released in 1975, was directed by a young Steven Spielberg and based on the novel by Peter Benchley. It stars Roy Scheider as Police Chief Martin Brody, Richard Dreyfuss as marine biologist Matt Hooper, and Robert Shaw as the grizzled shark hunter Quint. The plot is simple but effective. A giant great white shark terrorizes the fictional beach town of Amity Island, and our trio of heroes must hunt it down. But oh boy, is there so much more to this movie than just that basic plot. Let's break it down, shall we? First, let's talk about the cast. Scheider, Dreyfuss, and Shaw are an absolute powerhouse trio. Scheider brings this everyman quality to Brody that makes him incredibly relatable. You really feel his struggle as he tries to protect the town while battling his own fear of the water. Dreyfuss as Hooper is this perfect blend of scientific knowledge and youthful enthusiasm. And then there's Shaw as Quint. Man, what a performance. That USS Indianapolis monologue, chills every single time. But it's not just the main trio that shines. Murray Hamilton as the mayor is the perfect embodiment of short-sighted greed, putting profit over people's lives. And Lorraine Gary as Ellen Brody doesn't get enough credit for her performance. She brings such warmth and depth to what could have been a pretty thankless, worried wife role. Now let's talk about the plot. On the surface, it's a simple man versus nature story, but there's so much more going on beneath the surface. Sorry, I couldn't resist. You've got themes of masculinity, of man's relationship with nature, of the conflict between scientific knowledge and traditional experience. And let's not forget the biting critique of local politics and tourism-driven economies. One of the things I love most about Jaws is how it builds tension. Spielberg, in a stroke of accidental genius, had to limit how much we see the shark due to mechanical issues with the prop. But this limitation turned into the movie's greatest strength. By not showing the shark by just hinting at its presence with that iconic John Williams score, dun dun, dun dun, Spielberg taps into our primal fears of the unknown. Speaking of John Williams, can we take a moment to appreciate that score? It's so simple, just 2 notes, but it's become synonymous with danger. It's a perfect example of how music can elevate a film from good to great. Now let's dive into the reception of Jaws, both when it was released and how it's viewed today. When Jaws hit theaters in 1975, it was a phenomenon. It basically invented the summer blockbuster as we know it. Critics loved it too. Roger Ebert gave it 4 stars, calling it a sensationally effective action picture, a scary thriller that works all the better because it's populated with characters that have been developed into human beings. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. Again, sorry, I can't help myself with these puns. Some critics felt it was too intense, too violent. And marine biologists weren't thrilled with how it portrayed sharks, fearing it would lead to needless shark killings. Peter Benchley, who wrote the original novel, actually became a shark conservationist later in life, partly out of guilt over the film's impact on shark populations. In the years since its release, Jaws has only grown in esteem. It's now considered a classic of American cinema, regularly appearing on greatest films of all time lists. Film scholars have dissected every frame, finding new meanings and interpretations. Some see it as an allegory for Watergate, with the mayor's cover-up representing political corruption. Others view it through the lens of post-Vietnam America, with Quint as a stand-in for the traumatized veteran. But you know what? I've got my own theory about Jaws. Now hear me out on this one. I think Steven Spielberg is a time traveler, and Jaws is actually an allegory for the COVID-19 pandemic. I know it sounds crazy. But just think about it. You've got this invisible threat that's keeping people out of the water, or in our case, keeping us inside our homes. You've got local officials more concerned with the economy than public safety, insisting everything is fine when it clearly isn't. You've got experts, Hooper, being ignored in favor of traditional knowledge or outright denial. And you've got ordinary people thrust into extraordinary circumstances, having to become heroes to save their community. Even the ways people react to the threat mirror what we saw during the pandemic. Some people, like Brody, take it seriously from the start. Others, like the townspeople who go swimming anyway, act like there's no danger at all. And then you've got folks like Quint, who acknowledge the threat, but think they're tough enough to handle it on their own. Now, I'm not saying Spielberg actually predicted the pandemic, but it's a testament to how universal the themes of Jaws are that we can draw these parallels nearly 50 years later. Of course, no discussion of Jaws would be complete without mentioning its impact on the film industry. It didn't just create the summer blockbuster, it changed how movies were marketed and distributed. Before Jaws, the common strategy was to slowly roll out a film in a few theaters and let word of mouth build. Jaws went wide immediately, accompanied by a massive national TV marketing campaign. This strategy is now the norm for big releases. Jaws also sparked the trend of merchandising that we now see with every major film. T-shirts, posters, toys, you name it, there was probably a Jaws version of it in 1975. But perhaps the most significant impact of Jaws was on Spielberg's career. It catapulted him from a promising young director to a Hollywood powerhouse. Without Jaws, we might not have gotten E.T., Indiana Jones, Jurassic Park, or Schindler's List. It's not an exaggeration to say that Jaws changed the course of cinema history. We can't talk about Jaws without mentioning its impressive awards haul. The film was a juggernaut during the 1976 awards season, proving that a summer blockbuster could also be a critical darling. At the 48th Academy Awards, Jaws was nominated for 4 Oscars and won 3 of them. It took home the award for Best Film Editing, Best Original Dramatic Score for John Williams' iconic work, and Best Sound. The only category it lost was Best Picture, which went to One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest that year. Now, I've got to say, I think the Academy dropped the ball by not nominating Spielberg for Best Director. I mean, come on. The level of tension he maintains throughout the film, the performances he gets out of his actors, the way he turned technical limitations into strengths. It's masterful direction. But hey, that's the Oscars for you. Jaws didn't just clean up at the Oscars, though. It won 3 BAFTA awards, including Best Film Music for John Williams. It also snagged the Golden Globe for Best Original Score. The film's impact was recognized beyond just film awards, too. The American Film Institute has honored Jaws multiple times over the years. It ranks at number 48 on their list of the 100 greatest American films of all time. John Williams' score was ranked the 6th greatest American film score of all time. And the shark was named the 18th greatest villain in American film history. You know, it's interesting to think about how Jaws might fare at award shows if it were released today. In recent years, we've seen more recognition for genre films at the Oscars. Movies like The Shape of Water and Parasite have won Best Picture, so who knows? Maybe if Jaws came out now, it would have snagged that top prize. But honestly, does Jaws really need more awards? Its legacy speaks for itself. It's a film that has stood the test of time, continuing to thrill and inspire audiences nearly 50 years after its release. And in my book, that's worth more than any gold statue. Now, I mentioned earlier that watching Jaws is a 4th of July tradition for me, and I'm sure I'm not alone in this. There's something about watching a movie set during a 4th of July celebration that just feels right for the holiday. But more than that, I think Jaws embodies a lot of what we celebrate on Independence Day. It's a story about a community coming together to face a threat. It's about ordinary people doing extraordinary things. It's about standing up to authority when that authority is wrong. In a way, Brody, Hooper, and Quint are like a microcosm of America itself. Different backgrounds and viewpoints, but united in a common cause. Plus, let's be honest, is there anything more American than facing your fears and punching a shark in the face? I think not. So, fellow basement dwellers, as we approach this 4th of July, I encourage you all to make Jaws part of your celebration. Watch it with fresh eyes. Look for those deeper themes. Appreciate the craftsmanship that went into every shot, every line of dialogue, every note of that iconic score. And the next time you're at the beach and you hear someone humming dun 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 dun, just remember, you're gonna need a bigger boat. That's all for now, movie fans. Until next time, keep your harpoons sharp and your inflatable rafts inflated. This is Journey Joe Mitchell, signing off from the TV basement.